Welcome to part 3. If you haven't seen parts 1 or 2, they're linked in the description. This video will showcase a main design and takes a look at large furnace bases. As such, the overview and in-depth build guide have been timestamped for ease of access. Anyway, onto the good shit, the base build. I like to keep my builds relatively simple. Not too simple like the smooth-brained Zerg box, but simple enough so that they don't require you to find the perfect flat location in empty parts of the map, or place 20 foundations to set up multi-TC bases or roof stacking. So, the only key concept behind the main base is a double bunker. Why, you may ask? Well, Rust is all about balancing what you put in versus what you get out. A 50 rocket raid cost means nothing to me. It ain't worth 10 to 15k upkeep, and it certainly won't stop an angry Zerg. I enjoy playing the game. I don't want to spend all of day 1 or 2 of wipe grinding stone for a 30k base just to wake up the next morning in a cold sweat as I wait for the loading screen to render the remnants of my base littered with, well, what can only be described as rust. That's why a raid cost, for me at least, is all about giving you a chance to defend in an online raid. More often than not, if they're gonna offline you, you don't stand a chance to begin with. And to be honest, I think this is the real problem with the base building scene. It comes from this obsession with raid cost. People will forget the simple things. Screaming at nakeds while you chase them down with your rock. Dying to a 20-man Zerg with AKs just to be called trash. Losing 3 hours of component farm in one bad recycler run. This is the Rust I know, I love, and I play. And it's why I build small, but I've stalled long enough. First, let's take a look at the double bunker base, both of its pros and its cons. This base comes in 2 main variations. The first is the main core of this base, a simple double bunker design with an airlock. It comes in at a cost of 190 HQM, 6.5k frags, 4.2k stone, and 3k wood. It's perfect for solos, duos, trios, large group starters, built in combination with a few other designs, built with multiple double bunker bases in a compound to provide higher raid costs for lower build and upkeep costs, or as farm bases, as it provides all the utility space you could want, with 25.2 large boxes worth of space behind the metal layer, and 9.8 large boxes plus TC in the HQM Bunker. It is also fully expandable, which will be shown later in the build guide. The upkeep cost for this design comes in at 30 HQM, between 1k to 1.4k metal, depending if you have placed stores, 650 stone, and 40 wood, where you can store up to 9 days of upkeep in a fully stocked TC. However, for a small group, say a trio, this design can be fully upgraded with a shooting floor and roof heli garage floor for additional utility and defense. This part of the base is also fully expandable, adding no additional raid protection, so it can be built slowly over the course of the wipe. It adds an additional 15.8k stone, 2.1k frags, and 2.6k wood to the cost, which is fairly steep for the stone, but again, this really is an optional upgrade that's only really worth building if you intend to use this design core as a main base. The upkeep cost for this expanded design comes in at 34 HQM, 1.6k frags, 3.6k stone, and 260 wood, where you can store up to 3 days of upkeep in a stock TC. While you can add garage doors, reinforced windows, or shelves in this base to increase the overall raid costs and utility, this double bunker design requires no BPs, as they won't affect the raid costs directly to the most important loot, which in part is why it's such an effective early wipe base. This base provides a raid cost of 23 rockets, but since it does not require splash damage to be raided, it can be argued that the raid cost is instead 12 C4 to the loot. This cost is calculated when the base is fully sealed, as with both bunkers closed, a raider would have to go through the metal and armored layer to get to the most important loot and TC. The double bunker design has its pros and cons. Since this base uses 2 stability bunkers, you'll only have to spawn in once to destroy both. The stability bunkers, which are included in the original cost, will take 13 HQM, 250 frags, and 588 wood to close every time. The top stability bunker uses a roof instead of, say, a wall, because it allows the outermost bunker to be closed from both the inside and out, meaning that you can easily close it when you go out to roam, farm, raid, or AFK and go offline. The top high metal foundations are also something that need to be adjusted depending on the server. In my main servers, I'm fine leaving them metal and exposed, as this style of jackhammer raiding is just far too risky to pull off on the crowded setting of a main server without access to a workbench. But if you play on lower pop servers, then you should consider doing one of two things. Either honeycomb these foundations with metal half walls and floors, or upgrade one or both to HQM in a layout of your choice. If you'd like to see my whole discussion of jackhammer raiding and other situational styles like it, then check out part 2. So finally, let's take a tour. First, coming in through the main entrance, into the bottom section of the base, you'll find your first loot rooms and utility areas, including a research table, repair bench, and 6 furnaces. Although you can really design these spaces however you choose. Onto the top floor. Through here is where the bags and workbench are stored, but depending on your server, as I mentioned previously and in part 2, if you're worried about jackhammer raids, then removing or placing the workbench elsewhere makes jackhammer raiding quite a lot more difficult. Since I don't worry about jackhammer raiding through an armored layer, because I mostly play on main servers, here is a decent spot to place the tier 1 through 3. To the left and right are 2 more secured loot rooms offering plenty of additional storage that can be protected by an optional 5 doors or reinforced windows. And finally onto the bunker. This bunker is built for one thing, maximizing storage. This means that this layout has only one bag and uses a few BBQ and small box combos over the more convenient large boxes. There are multiple ways you can lay out this room, but I choose to cram as much shit as I possibly could into 1.5 rooms. The space totals 9.8 large boxes plus additional space in the TC as a result. Outside of the core bunker section is a simple 2-door airlock. This airlock points out one of the biggest downsides of building a design this small that's essentially doorless, which is, if you don't close your bunkers, this space becomes a very easy online raid or dangerously easy to go deep on. To prevent players going deep on this design, you can add an extended airlock with shotgun traps and metal shop fronts. This means now that if you leave your metal bunker open for convenience sake, you are now provided with still a minimum of 4 rockets to get to the HQM bunker, and enough doors to prevent players from going deep into your core area. This cost adds an additional 1.9k stone and 1k metal. So it's important to talk about the playstyle of this design. Well, the best way to prevent online raids is to keep your HQM bunker closed. While it isn't entirely convenient, you still have access to all of your utilities and 4 loot areas. Now, this becomes fairly usable if you really only store the most important loot like sulfur, scrap and higher tier components in the HQM bunker. Then you should still have access to everything else you need for farming, monument runs, roaming and stocking furnaces, only really needing to access this bunker loot for storage and gearing up for higher tier activities like raids. If you see yourself using this bunker storage often, then at a minimum I would recommend sealing off that area with at least the middle tier when you go out on big farm runs or roams, as it still does increase the raid cost, giving you some time to come back and defend your base in the case of an online raid. If you choose to use this as a main base, as mentioned earlier, there are a few upgrades you can do to increase the overall utility and defense of this design. First, we have the shooting floor. It's a pretty basic 360-degree shooting floor, even worthy of taking heli or defending against door campers and online raiders. It costs 5.2k stone and 1.9k frags. Finally is the roof, which costs 10.8k stone and 250 frags. This again is another nice PvP add-on, offering plenty of peek ups for heli, peek downs for players, and a sniper tower with windmill spots and heli storage for plenty of extra utility. Now hopefully you understand how this base works. It's not perfect, but I've used it for a few wipes and it provides the spaces I need with a decent enough raid cost for a cheap build cost. But, well, since large furnaces received some love with the new update, although it may be a little late, I thought it would be a good idea to quickly take a look at large furnace bases and see how cheap we can build them with the new triangle floor grills. So I've divvied up the bases into 3 main categories: the classic square footprint, a use of the new triangle frames, and a mix of the old and the new. To preface, each base's cost is calculated with an included triangle airlock, a triangle double door TC room, stone pickable outer foundations, and 1 layer of floor grills, although the old high foundation double stacking floor grills is still highly recommended for these designs. Starting from the beginning, we have the single large furnace bases. When we compare the cost between each, the triangle floor plan has the cheapest stone and wood cost, but the square footprint takes the cheapest metal cost, however not by much. This is a pretty common theme as each base variant isn't that much more expensive than the other. Overall though, the triangle single large furnace base is definitely the most cost effective version for its size. On to the most common, the double large furnace base. All three variants of this design can not only hold 2 large furnaces, but an additional 2 oil refineries. The triangle and the mixed floor plans have equal stone costs and very similar wood costs, with the only difference being in the floor grill metal cost, where both are beaten out by the square footprint. Seeing as all three have the exact same utility space, in my opinion, the mixed floor plan is the most cost effective design, as it beats the traditional square plan by 1.7k stone and is only 150 frags more expensive. And finally, the largest of the large furnace bases. Now this is where the utility sees its largest variation between each variant. The square variant holds 4 oil refineries and 5 large furnaces, meaning that while it is the most expensive out of the 3, it holds the most utility space. The triangle variant holds 4 oil refineries and 4 large furnaces, and while it has a lower stone cost than the square variant, its metal cost is higher, so I would skip this variant, as for an additional 1.8k stone, you could add an entire extra large furnace into your base. The final mixed variant only holds 4 large furnaces, lacking any space for oil refineries, but it does have the cheapest cost, both matching the square floor plan's metal cost and reducing the cost to 12.1k stone and 2k wood. So in my opinion, both the mixed and the square floor plan are pretty strong choices for the largest furnace base. It really comes down to player preference. To recap though, the most cost effective large furnace bases are the single triangle circle design, the double mixed large furnace base, and either the 4x4 large square or the large mixed design depending on the utility space you want. Alright, onto the build guide for this base. There will be timestamps again to highlight all the key components to this build, but I'll try and walk you through in an ordered fashion. Since I will be building an expandable stone base, here are all of the final upgrades for both the metal and armored layers, in case you need to build straight into these tiers and require a point of reference. Quickly I should mention that there are a few ways to design these front loot rooms. First is using roof ramps. This will change the cost to 5.9k frags, and it provides a small amount of space with an on-ramp to get up to the high foundations. Second is using half-wall full loot rooms. This is the original metal cost at 6.5k frags, and it provides the most amount of storage. Finally, there is the high foundation half-wall loot room. This adjusts the cost to 6.1k frags, and is really used when the base is being built into a hill. Since this base uses a descending foundation layout, these 2 front foundations may not be able to be placed super low to the ground. You can ignore that back triangle as it's only used for honeycomb and just start placing up all the walls and upgrade everything to stone. Now upgrade these 3 high foundations to at least the wood tier, because if they get destroyed, you can't replace them once you've placed roofs over the top, unfortunately. Those 2 walls next to the roof need to be flipped around when you upgrade to metal, but for right now you can keep them flipped out like this just so you don't get soft side picked, although your 2 front high foundations are currently your biggest vulnerability. Moving on to our first bottom floor deployables. Now you can only place 3 furnaces in this corner for now until you've built your main bunker loot room, and we'll show why in a sec. From there you want to place a half wall triangle where your furnaces would have been, and then a triangle into the loot room above all of your bottom floor loot. This method saves you a lot of HQM, as instead of placing 2 half walls you only have to place 1 full wall. Finally, on the bottom floor you have your last area of the bunker. Now you want to make sure your 3 outer foundations are to HQM, as the clipping of objects really is a bit iffy when you use sheet metal or stone. Also make sure you place your half walls so you get perfect placement, and make sure once you finalize placing all your deployables that you can still walk in and out of the bunker over the campfire. And that's the finished starter for this design, coming in at a cost of 7,875 stone, 2,191 wood, and 1.2k frags, where the frag cost is only measured by the 3 doors and code locks, which obviously if you're building straight from the start of your wipe is going to be measured in wood, so you can ignore that for now. When you compare this to the classic starter, which is the 2x2, it is quite a bit more expensive, but it's always good to have a design that you can expand, whether it's from starter into this as your main, or whether it's fresh from wipe into this as your starter. Some last minute adjustments for this starter is that I would highly recommend, as I mentioned before, that you upgrade these 2 high foundations to sheet metal. As of right now, this is very easy to soft side pick into. And if you haven't built this on a hill and you're struggling to jump up, well, just add a single triangle stone foundation here, which you can later turn into an extended airlock if need be. Now you want to upgrade this to metal or get it to its final form as soon as you can, but obviously you don't have to until you get the resources. And also remember when you start upgrading to metal that you add your final bit of honeycomb, upgrading this back little triangle to metal. And make sure that you finally get these walls to metal and rotate them once you upgrade. Now you can either seal off the roof, or if you're going to build a roof / shooting floor extension, you need to add a single airlock with 2 doors. And make sure you seal it off with a wall so your airlock actually works. While you're building this design, if you choose to leave the left side open, then you can have an airlock which is 6 doors to the main area. Finally, on the second floor, you want to upgrade everything outside of the front airlock to sheet metal and seal off the left hand side of the base. From there you want to first place optional doors, then fill both the left and right loot rooms with floors for shelves and chests. Then you can move on to the front of the base in the 2 airlock rooms where you can place an optional dump area and beds. Well, this is where the build guide ends for the original variant of this design. If you chose to upgrade this into a main design with a shooting floor and roof add-on, then we'll be moving on to them now. First, you have to choose how you want to jump up to the shooting floor when your main bunker is open. You can use either stairs, which are a little inconvenient as you have to build them every time you open your bunker, or you can use a ladder, which is a permanent solution but does require BPs. And from here, just follow the rest of the steps to build the roof and shooting floor and you should be done. Well, that's the final section in the 3-part base building discussion series. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you've enjoyed the content you've seen this far, then stay tuned as I've had some time to plan some interesting stuff. Anyways though, thanks for sticking around to the end and watching the video. The support has been pretty crazy and I appreciate it a lot. For now though, I'll catch you in the next one.